Hi, I'm Ann Coulter. Welcome to my Substack. This is the interview I'm so excited about. I saw Kevin Sabet on C-SPAN last week making my morning coffee because they kept talking about Trump on MSNBC and CNN, and I can only take so much of that. And oh my gosh, it was the greatest debate I'd ever seen. The head of, I think, Normal, debating Kevin Sabet, the author of most recently Smokescreen, which I read over the weekend. It's a little wet. I read it in my pool. And it's magnificent. I'm so happy to have you, Kevin Sabet. I've never seen anyone who knows so much about pot and hates it almost as much as I do.
You're sweet. Thanks so much for having me. It's really an honor to be on with you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we do have a few things we disagree about, but we'll get to that later.
Sure.
Alcohol and smoking are actually not that bad and have many benefits, but we'll get to that later. What I really liked about some of the things so many things, there were many things I didn't think of. One, it's a minor point, but it struck me. I mentioned it to a few friends over the weekend, and it's really true. How you say, with heroin, with meth, with OxyContin, even with cigarettes. And I'm kind of enthusiastic about tobacco, but I'm not as crazy as the potheads. The zealotry there's no other drug that produces this kind of zealotry.
No, it's a religion. It's a complete religion. Psychedelics are sort of a close second, but it's going to take many decades for them to catch up. You've never seen anybody protest for their right to use meth at the state capitol, or threaten the governors and send send people death threats because they're saying heroin is bad. You just don't see it. But with this drug, it's the sacred plant for so many people, and I think most of them have just been completely duped. For some people, it's this culture war thing, and so it's like they're still living in 1969 when their friend with long hair was arrested, in Texas, and then having a joint in their pocket. But for other people, unfortunately, they're just completely addicted. They're addicted to marijuana, and it's actually sad. They need help. They need help to get off of it. They're so obsessed and enamored. The level of obsession you've honestly never seen before.
Yes. You mentioned that girl in Michigan who got a pot leaf tattooed on her ring finger because she was totally committed. And among the things I hate about potheads, and I have known people who were addicted, thank God, not now, but it's the only thing they can talk about. You have to keep hearing how George Washington grew hemp, and the one guy who was allegedly put in prison just for possession of marijuana, which has never happened. And, this story, and they can't talk about anything else.
No, they can't. And unfortunately, they're reinforced online with just like different forums and websites that it's just like this echo chamber. So they're just reinforced. And I'd argue to say that, the irony here is that, this is like something that, again, was sort of this generational divide in the 60s and 70s. You were either with Nixon or you were with pot kind of thing. And but basically it's ironic because those same, and I went to Berkeley, like I get it. Like I joke about how I started Citizens for a Drug-Free Berkeley, which was like a coalition for a wine-free France. I understand what it's like to be in those situations. But the sad thing about Berkeley is that this is like the hippie movement. It's sort of the most anti-corporate movement you could ever imagine. It was all about, drum circles and weed and just, sex and love and all that. And, marijuana has been completely corporatized. So when I send a tweet out now, I get much more hatred and vitriol from, we call them sort of the canna bros, the pot, this sort of pot bros, the pot Wall Street gang, who are like trading penny stocks. Their whole life is depending on whether something is, 12 cents today or 6 cents today. And it's just like, that's their entire life, which is also sad, but it's all about money. That's the irony here. And it totally is about corporatization. It's about these industries consolidating. If you think like mom and pop, like you're like, your friendly, sister Tilly down the street, who's sort of at Berkeley, living in the Berkeley Hills or whatever, is going to be benefiting from legalization. It's a joke. If it's legal, by the way, if it's legalized federally, I mean, they all go out of business. It's mail order. It's grown in one region in California, which will be the best region to grow it in. It's sent out everywhere. You do not need a dispensary. I mean, frankly, get rid of those pesky pot shops. I guess that's one positive thing. But it's going to be, consolidated by 3 or 4 companies. It's going to be the Amazon of weed. I mean, it's not going to be, Sister Tilly down the street. So it's just, there's so many misconceptions.
No, it's a really good point you make about how this is big tobacco, big pharma. This is the Sackler family all over again, because I've been sort of fantasizing about when they, brought in the tobacco executives and had them say under oath that they didn't think cigarettes were addictive. I've been fantasizing about sometime in the future, 10, 20 years from now, when we do the exact same thing over pot.
We've literally been showing that clip, and which is also on our favorite network, C-SPAN, from C-SPAN, a 1994 hearing with all the tobacco executives saying, I believe tobacco is not addictive. I believe nicotine is not addictive. I believe nicotine is not addictive. Nicotine is not addictive. For what we know, it's not addictive. Over and over. We literally have that as our intro to we have a podcast called The Drug Report, not The Drudge Report, The Drug Report. And sorry, Matt Drudge, I hope, flattery is, imitation is the best form of flattery. But basically, and we have that as our intro because that's exactly what it is. This is going to be happening. And I don't know if it's going to happen in 5 years, 20 years, or 50. I can't. After 2016, unlike you, I got out of the sort of predicting politics business. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And because the science is so overwhelming, and this is the irony here. You should see it. I mean, I wish she'd kill me if I showed it, if I told you who she was, but like one of the top, this woman is speaking around the world, every day. She is, I'm sure, very left of center woman, incredibly smart, sort of public servant researcher. She could be getting paid 10 times more if she worked for a pharma company, but instead she's sort of in a small office in a Northeast university trying to do research, but publishes incredible research. And she just emailed, because I had congratulated her on an article, and she said, I hope it helps change the perception out there because it feels so dark these days given the misperception. I mean, this is not some super, no offense, neocon right-wing thing. Not that that's, I get it. I get the program on that's bad. But the perception is it's sort of like the flat earthers who think that marijuana is bad. It's the exact opposite. It's it's a scientific consensus. You have I can count on one hand the researchers and doctors who are even willing to debate this or even think anything different than what I think on this. And the ones that are very loud, and unfortunately they happen to be, usually they're related to some big, sort of corporate person in the pot business, or some intellectual, who was a huge legalization advocate, at Harvard or something, literally their son. Unlike those 4 or 5 people in the world, everyone else, this is not a debate.
Yes. I have a lot of doctor friends who send me the articles that keep showing up in, the American Medical Association or Lancet, this, that, and the other thing. And the ones who actually, i.e. doctors who have to deal with this, the stories they tell me are hair raising, besides the one I know just from my own acquaintances. And meanwhile, the money on the other side. I had no idea until seeing you and reading your book. Wow, it is corporate interests. It is the big money makers they're like the ones pushing mass immigration. They can make a short buck, and who cares what happens to the country?
Oh yeah, they don't care. They're making they're literally, they're proud of that too. It's not even no one's hiding anything. Again, look at my Twitter replies, look at who's replied. This is a sad part. I used to sort of debate with sort of the, oddball Princeton professor who believed that we should legalize all drugs, and I totally disagree, but can have a nice you enjoy a nice intellectual argument, and we'd all go out to dinner afterwards with the young Democratic Club of Yale, and it would be fun. It's not that. Those people are all gone. They're all gone, and it's all these sort of faceless, nameless. You could see they almost look like bots, online, who are just investing and making money. And the few sort of corporate types that sort of show their face, there's a handful of them, and they're everywhere, lobbying and all this. But they're frankly I mean, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but they are sort of in many ways in the shadows. They're hiring every single K Street lobbying firm. We can't even get even if we had the money, which is like a joke, like we have a sort of order of magnitude fraction of what the pro side has in terms of advocacy. But even if we had that, we probably couldn't hire them because they're all conflicted. Like they've hired almost every single law firm and case. There's I can count one or two, and we sort of sometimes work with, but even they are somewhat conflicted. I mean, it's just amazing the money in this.